Hi everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I'm currently sitting outside with this German Shepherd Husky mix that I'm dog sitting. His name's Monty, so excuse any background noises. So I just wanted to provide a bit of an introduction for the episode today, and then we'll get right into this conversation with Tommy. Okay, so ancient spirituality in India birthed the path of yoga, which contains a principle called dharma. We can understand a person's individual dharma as their purpose and role and duty in this human life. This role is different for every single person, and just like we see in nature's perfect cycles and ebbs and flows, every person plays their role for the evolvement of consciousness and for the mysterious dance that is life. Everyone will play their role regardless of whether or not they know they're playing a role, but if we bring some consciousness to our duty, to our personal dharma, then we can live a life that has less suffocation and suffering and more understanding, patience, and compassion. We find greater breadth, greater peace, regardless of whether one's current circumstances are objectively peaceful or chaotic. As we begin to identify less with our ego, our aversion to pain and addiction to pleasure, which is constantly changing, and more with our soul, that core sense of being and aliveness and connection that does not change, we come into balance. The balance of identifying evenly with both ego and soul fuels a life that is impactful, creative, and meaningful in the physical world, while still knowing that everything ends. But just because everything ends, that doesn't mean that we become nihilistic or apathetic, which will just add to our suffering. It means that we do our life work regardless because we have a reverence and a duty to the intelligent unfolding of life. In today's episode of This Human Thing, Tommy is back. In our previous conversation, episode 19, we spoke on mechanisms to lift ourselves from the dark chapters of our lives. Once you begin to gain momentum through devotion, discipline, and faith, a space opens up where you can finally feel like you can breathe again, like life has color again. From this space, you can think, see, and move with greater clarity in the world. Today's conversation explores how to, within this space, move with confidence, passion, grace, and humility in order to live a life that is balanced, fulfilling, and aligned with your personal, unique purpose and calling. So that is it for the intro. I'm Kat, and this is episode 20, Breathing Space for a Life of Purpose with Tommy. Thanks for hanging out with us, and without further ado, let's get into it. Hello.
Hello, how are you doing, Kat?
I am doing very well. Should I introduce us in?
Let's do it.
All
Sounds great.
right. Hello, everybody, people of the world. Welcome to another episode of This Human Thing. The episodes have been very spaced out recently. Last time we had an episode, Tommy was on and he's back again. And I am just absolutely loving the fact that we're going to make this a consistent thing. So even if I'm not putting out episodes, which is something that I do intend to do more, I want to at least once a month have him on because he's just so refreshing and we really light each other up. And yeah, this podcast is a podcast on the human experience. So it really covers any topic, anything is fair game. We will voice our opinions and our viewpoints, but they're just ours at this point in our life. So if you take anything that's useful or interesting or inspiring or whatever it may be, that's awesome. But yeah, we're speaking from our limited personal experience.
Yeah.
Welcome, Tommy.
Thank you, Kat. And I just want to say, I think about all the time when we first started talking in Bali at the yoga teacher training, and we both were, connecting with each other and connecting with everyone there. And as time has gone on, I think it's become more and more obvious to me how rare like our chemistry is as friends. And it's just When we first started talking, we would have little powwows for like an hour or two, and I was like, wow, Kat must have these conversations with everybody. You know what I mean? And I just think like we both bring out the best in each other when we talk, and that's why I love having you in my life so much.
Ditto. Yeah. So when we were planning this, also, I'm really glad that we are recording this right now because I'm currently in the midst of moving, as you know, which is why everything behind me is so bare. Which is, it feels nice. Like, it feels nice to just like clear everything out, like move into a new space. I'm trying not to rush it because I get like super, like, I just want to like pound it all out and be done with it. But this morning I was just like, damn, dude, like, I don't know if I can do this podcast. I am like running on empty right now. But I had lunch and I think that boosted my morale. And so I'm really glad that we're here doing this. I think, at least for me, I'm going through a big shift in my life right now. And it seems like a lot of things have been happening for you as well, from what you've told me, just saying, like, I have so much to say. So I'm really excited for us to have this conversation, to just catch up as friends, but also to share this on this platform so that other people can, listen to our journey and it can parallel theirs in some ways.
Awesome. Well, what's been coming up for you? I can't wait to hear.
Um, like, in regards to a shift.
Yeah, what's going on?
I just feel like the past year has felt so suffocating. And I know that I'm not the only person who's been feeling that, but it just seemed like constantly, like I was fighting so hard and I was constantly just getting shoved back down, and I would get up and get shoved back down. And I never gave up, but there was definitely periods where I was just like, I'm just gonna like stay down for a little bit because I'm so frustrated and I feel so defeated. Um, and so it was really hard for me to, like, I knew that there was a light there at the end of the tunnel, but it was getting harder and harder for me to like remember what that felt like, because I just kept getting shoved back down and shoved back down. And then probably like at the beginning of this year, I could see the light, but I wasn't in it yet. So it still felt so far away. And now it was kind of like a little bit of a tease. But I feel like recently, like within the past 2 weeks, like now I feel like I'm in the light. So now it's not such a tease. I'm like, okay, like I'm starting to like feel the little bit of warmth. I don't feel like I'm fully like, right now, but yeah, like life just feels more open. Everything is not as like, yeah, like so much pressure and suffocating. And I'm not taking things like everything is an attack, and I'm not like constantly like so on edge and constantly like in like this kind of like survival mode all the time. And it's so freeing. And the best way I can say it, which I've already said multiple times, is I just feel like I have space to breathe right now. And in that space to breathe, I'm able to just have so much mental clarity. And when you have a goal that you're working towards and you have mental clarity, then all the steps just seem so much easier. It's so much easier to attain your goals. Whereas when you're feeling really clouded and really fatigued, and it's if you lack that mental clarity, then like your goals are just going to seem like just so like hard to grasp. So I'm really so grateful for this breathing space, which literally it just feels like a shift in perspective. And in that, like everything is just feeling like so much more accessible, like whether that be like connecting to myself, connecting to other people, connecting to my work, like, all these like actions that we take in life, or connecting just to being alive within itself. Just the connection is so much greater, and that's where I'm at. Obviously, there's like a lot of specific details within that, but that's just the general theme.
I had such a beautiful image of when you're talking about kind of walking into the being in the dark and not being able to see the light for a little bit. I was kind of imagining you walking into a tunnel, and there's that phrase that the tunnel is darkest before the light, and it's that that faith to keep going, even when you can't see that light. And then I imagined you like just seeing like that first little glimmer of light out in the distance, and how that can be. I feel like a lot of times, like I've actually recently been thinking about just insecurity in general. And specifically, I've been talking in my yoga classes about my relationship with the mirror, because how much it's changed over the years. Like in college, like drunkenly, would find myself in front of the mirror, like self-deprecating talk, like looking at myself at like middle of the night, and then I'd kind of forget about it, or maybe just brushed it away, probably that. And or like seeing, my reflection during college in the Netflix iPad, like in between when it's like, are you sure you want to keep watching? And it goes to a black screen, you see your reflection, you're like, oh God. And I just remember the first moment of like realizing that, and of course it was like the deepest, or it was the darkest part where I felt most down about myself. And that's kind of when you're open to changing. And so just bringing awareness to the fact that I had a bad relationship with looking at myself in the mirror, not all the time, but not way too much for me to be happy about my self-image. And I remember when I first started realizing that I had that relationship, then it started that kind of push and pull, right? It's like you have one day where you look in the mirror and you look amazing, but then for some reason the next day, not that your body has changed that much in a day or whatever, because your mind sees differently depending on the day. If I felt bad the next day, I wouldn't think that I looked good in the mirror. And so there was kind of that push and pull. And eventually I got to a place where I just felt comfortable with everything on my face and my body, and not really seeing it from a purely aesthetic place. Although I still like to talk myself up, I like to say, wow, you look amazing today in my head.
Iron Man Tommy. I said at the beginning of the episode, I was like, I love the mustache. It suits you so well. You look like a fireman. I just love it. Not at the beginning of the episode, but like when we first logged on.
Yeah, no, I love the fireman compliment for sure.
Yeah, it is a compliment.
But yeah, I just found security in my self-image, I guess, like my physical self-image. And that came around the same time that I started accepting myself just as I was, not just the physical side of it, but more like everything about myself, And I think those two things are inextricably linked for sure. And I had just a little side story that kind of emphasizes a kind of a funny idea about self-image. But one of the things I was always really insecure about since like middle school was my eyebrows being too big. And like, I remember in 6th grade, it was probably the first time I ever worried about my appearance. It was my friend's mom. She said, oh, you got to pluck your eyebrows. Cause I had like a unibrow going. I was like 13 years old or whatever. And since that moment, I seriously was self-conscious about my eyebrows. And like a couple of years ago, I was sitting in a coffee shop and some random girl came up to me and she goes, oh my gosh, you have the most amazing eyebrows. And
they're so luscious. Like people would kill.
You can land a plane on these brows.
You can fly away.
But it was just so funny because I had at that point come to a place of acceptance with my brows and my hair or whatever I was originally self-conscious of. And it just felt, I was like, oh, thank you so much. I've never gotten a compliment on my eyebrows in my life. And she was like, oh yeah, big eyebrows are in now.
They are.
And literally since then, I have gotten so many compliments on my brows. And I'm like, how funny is that trends formed into eventually, like it used to be a bad thing the way that I looked. And now it's like a good looking thing. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. And regardless of whether it was in or not, like it's still been you the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's so important to kind of have this underlying understanding with yourself, especially because, you know, your perspective is constantly going to change day to day. And that doesn't mean that you ignore the things in your life that you have autonomy over to change, but like things that you can't change or things that like you're working towards, but you're just not there yet. Like if you have this kind of, yeah, this understanding with yourself that like, I gotta accept myself here and now. I had this like deep, you know how it's so easy to have an ideal, but to actually experience that
Mm-hmm.
is definitely really hard. Because like if you, for example, have the ideal, oh, like love everyone. You're like, yes, like I wanna love everyone, but to actually go throughout my day to day and love everyone and not judge anyone and not be, you know, like rude or something, like is, you know, so different. And so I like, you know, I hold this ideal of acceptance. But it's just, it's such like a powerful moment when you like feel the experience of like, oh yes, like this, I can now feel what this ideal is. And I just remember the other day just kind of like sitting back and be like, damn dude, like I'm so committed to this person that I'm in right now. Because like when you take a step back and you're like, okay, like this body, it's something that I'm kind of inhabiting. Like this is, you know, my my vehicle for action in this human life. And same thing with the mind. Like this is like the computer that moves the machine that can accomplish things. And when you take a step back and you're like damn, like I want to take care of this thing. Like this is what I've got. And like I choose this one, not that I really had another choice, but like I choose to be fully in this one. And like me and her, like we're in this together and it's gonna be a wild ride. Like maybe everything doesn't turn out exactly how I would hope and dream, but like we're in this together, and like makes you feel like you have this like little buddy for your journey. And you know, it's kind of like your soul is one person, your ego is another person. Like your soul, the thing that doesn't change, and your ego, the thing that's like constantly judging and um, all of that, your personality. And it's just so fun. It's just like felt like we're holding hands now and we're going, and we'll get into like these, you know how you always have this inner conflict in your head, and now I see it like as a little bit more funny. Like for the other day I was going to go on a run in the morning, and like I've just been on a really good workout routine. I was just like, you know what, like I'm just not feeling a run this morning, like da, da, da. And I'm like, okay. And then we have this argument. It's like, it really is fine, and it's not a big deal if you don't go on this run, but like it's the principle of it. Like we're working on discipline right now, and if you're like constantly lying to yourself and saying you're going to do something and not doing it, and then once I started getting into this argument, like something else took over and was like, okay, now you're like wasting time deciding if you're going to go on this run or not. So now you're really going to go on this run, and you're going to run longer, and you're not going to stop, and you're going to feel great afterwards. So it's just like really interesting to examine that relationship that you have like between your kind of like ideal self and your like self that's so used to like suffering and like, you know, being indecisive and judging and trying to like rationalize things. So
You know, when you were talking, it was so interesting because I was thinking you were talking about the ideal, and I was thinking, yeah, like embodying your ideal. And then you started talking about how it connects to the body. And I started thinking, wow, embody, like to really embody something. It's like it lives in you. You don't need proof beyond that. You can feel it in the body.
Yeah. And it's the same thing with like intuition. It's that knowledge that there's no explanation for it. You can't prove it. You just know. And when you know in life, when you have that like gut feeling, that intuition, you're like, this is how it is, or this is what I need to do, or this is what is truth for me. Like you can't, like there's nothing you could do that could ever combat that or like prove that wrong, because it's like, yeah, it's like part of you now. It's truth.
And
And
it's,
I,
oh yeah, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, like the highest truths are often ones that it can't be explained in words. It's just something that you feel like very viscerally.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of times we think of intuition as knowing where you're going to know where you're going to end up, but it's really just knowing which way to go now,
in this very moment.
Yes. And it may be driven by an image of something, a goal off in the distance or something. But it's just about knowing where to go now. And if you end up, and actually, this is a nice time to just drop that last time Kat and I talked, I told her I had a quote from the Bhagavad Gita that I just started reading that I wanted to share with her. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm reading the Bhagavad Gita too. That's great.
Yeah, I have it right here. I actually just finished it.
Oh, you just finished it?
Yeah, I finished it yesterday.
I have the same copy as you. I'm way behind. I literally am like done with the preface. I haven't even gone through the story yet, but the preface is so good.
I don't remember. As soon as I finished it, I was like, I want to read this again right now. Because I wrote a little reflection in my journal about it. Because it's everything in it is very simple. And we often talk about how the simplest principles are the most profound. And I'm just like, dang, dude, I'm sure that I like just missed so many little gems in here and so many things I could reread over and it would have a completely different effect, or it would have such an affirming like effect on the things in there. So what are your thoughts on it so far? I don't remember what was in the preface.
Well, one of the things I liked a lot so far that, they kind of just give an overlay of some concepts, some Eastern concepts that are good to know going into the story. But one of the ideas, and one of the main ideas, is to basically embody your truth and do your work, the work that's meant for you, but not regarding or focusing on whether or not the fruits come to you. It's like sowing, just knowing that what comes to you what you reap will be what it is. And you can have an idea of fruit that you want to reap, but it's not getting caught up or attached to the end result of what you're doing. And so you stay completely present with what you're doing. You can be driven by something else, but or driving to something else is a better way to say that, I think. But you're not necessarily, it's not about getting there. And that was one of the things that struck me when I first read the preface. I was thinking about that a lot.
I feel like that, there's a lot of different topics in the book, but that, at least for me, I felt like was the central theme, because there's so many people hold so many different beliefs on how one should live. And I feel like this book just provides such a simple, selfless path to just live a joyous life and live a loving life. And that comes down to, as you just said, you're present, you're here, and you have certain habits. And sometimes like it takes you a while to actually be able to experience this feeling of, yeah, I don't want to work for the results. And I think that that's a never-ending process, because just like as a human animal, like that's our driving force, so it seems almost like counterintuitive to, oh, I do work just for the work itself, just because it's my duty. And that doesn't mean you're working blindly. That means that like you said, you have an idea of where you're going, and that's like your compass. And you are just present, and you kind of intuitively listen, and you're like, okay, this is what I do right now. And you focus on it. And then you move on to the next thing, and then the next thing, and the next thing. And in all that space, you have the breathing room to just like once in a while, or not once in a while, but like quite often, just feel into life around you and be like, damn, I'm really in this thing. Really? And it's crazy. And because you're not attached personally. And as we know, you can't, it's difficult to rest in that place of not taking things personally. Because I go through phases where like right now I'm just like, it's bliss, like we're chilling, but like this morning, I was just like, fuck, I gotta move all this stuff. I'm sweating. Why didn't I ask anyone to help me? I'm like, it's fine. But being able to be still and listen and say, okay, like, what's my duty now? And know that you're not doing it for you. You're doing it because you're serving your role in like the dance of this huge mystery that we're in. And the thing is, you can fight it all you want. You can have these like mental battles with yourself all the time, but that's just going to lead to more suffering. And there's not, like, life is short, and there's not really like a right or wrong way to live your life in terms of like, oh, I want to be a carpenter, or I want to be a fireman, or or it's just about like, you want to grow, you want to expand, and that's not just for yourself, that's for the people that are close to you that you care about, and for humanity as a whole. And the way that you can really truly do that is to find peace in yourself and have peace as that container for your life, so that you're moving not out of reactiveness all the time, not out of how does this affect me, how does this affect me, how does this affect me, but you're calm, and like, you interact with the tasks that you have and the people around you, and you interact with your own self with this sense of ease and this sense of fluidity, and there's not this pressure, because we all die in the end anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I totally feel that. I actually just read this sentence, and it's right up the alley of what you're talking about. But it's talking about the person who embodies their highest ideals, the highest ideals. And that person will be vital, active, compassionate, self-reliant in the highest sense. For he or she looks to the self for everything and needs nothing from life but the opportunity to give.
I love that.
I just love the number one, compassion has been coming up like crazy to me. Like, I always knew, I mean, I think, I won like the nice kid award in 5th grade for the elementary.
That's a real thing.
So I can't remember who it was named after, but it's like basically like the teachers vote on the nice kid in school. I won that. So I like am kind of naturally that way, which is great. I think my parents instilled a lot of compassion and kindness into me where they knew they could, where they were kind of compassionate. But recently, just realizing how foundational compassion is to health and happiness. Like, to be and to hold full compassion. The places that we can't hold compassion in our lives for other people is where we haven't held that for ourselves. And it might not be the exact same thing, but it's something deeper that we haven't held ourselves with. And that's where we find it difficult to give compassion to other people. When we can relate to other people, we can give them compassion so easily, when it's something that doesn't make us feel bad about ourselves, but to be able to give compassion to other people, I mean, it allows you to let go of judgment. Like, judgment we judge what we have not accepted within ourselves. And that's just how it ends up being. And how we go back to that is we just find how we judge ourselves. It's like they're the two basically the same ideas, but it really does. What you want to receive is what you're able to give. Like, you have to give what you want to receive. If you want to receive love, you have to be able to give love to people. If you want to receive judgment, you can give as much judgment as you want. But even before that, before you can give, you have to cultivate it yourself. Actually, Sonia Renee Taylor said, she's so funny. She was like, you're talking about filling up the cup, filling up your cup first because you can't give from an empty cup. And she goes, oh no, y'all can't have any of my cup. You can't have any of the liquid from my cup. You can have the overflow. If it's overflowing, you can take the liquid that's flowing out of my cup, but you can never have any of the liquid in my cup. And I just love that idea so much.
I do love that. But you do need to fill yourself up first. But that doesn't mean that by sharing with others that your own cup will lessen. Because once you fill your cup, like, you know, it's full, it's a cup, but like there's limitless liquid available. And that's just like, you know, love or life energy or whatever it may be. Like there's no cap on that. And so, you know, you fill your cup and you're like, oh, thank you, life. Like now I'm good. And those are those things like, okay, like I feel at peace. I'm okay. Maybe to get to that place of peace, you have some more like grindy work to do. You're like, okay, I'm getting to peace, but like, I'm going to have to like suffer a little longer to get there. That's okay. And then, you know, whether that be your, like your safety or your health or whatever else that may be, that work that you need to put in first to get to that peace. But once you have that peace, everything around you in life can change in beautiful ways or in horrific ways, but you're okay because you're identified with that part of you that does not change. And like, that's, you know, for lack of a better word, like your soul. And when you were speaking earlier about how we can give selflessly, this was something that I started to explore last year was like, oh, even myself is not me. So I need to give to myself and I need to do things for Kat, this person, from a place that is selfless. And so like by me neglecting to work hard to, you know, have stability and work hard to take care of my body and take care of my mind, I need to do those acts selflessly too, because even this body, even this person, this mind, this personality that I am inhabiting, like this is still not me. And so I need to take care of this one also just as selflessly as I would take care of anyone else. And that was something that was difficult for me to grasp because we're so conditioned to think that to act selflessly is almost kind of like an austere practice. Is that the right word?
I don't actually even know what austere means.
It's like, think of people who, you know, will, this is often in like India, like these sadhus that go around, these people who just give up everything in life. So, you know, they don't eat very much. They don't really have any possessions. They don't have a home. They leave their families. So it's like not about like that kind of selflessness that you're not taking care of this human that you're in. And that was just a big thing for me. Because in order for me to do my duty on this earth, like this one has to be in good shape. Because if I'm just trying to like be selfless, I'm going to become drained because I'm trying to pretend that my cup is full when it's not. And I'm going to burn out. And I've witnessed so many people who have such good intentions, but their cup is empty. And so the work that they're doing becomes less effective, even though they have these amazing selfless intentions. And
yeah, I actually just listened to a podcast with Layla Saad and Diego Perez, who's young Pueblo. He's like one of my favorite poets. He's just has beautiful presence on Instagram, actually. And he was talking about how he used to be he tried to originally liberate people through activism, you know, and that is a form of liberation, is trying to meet people's material needs. Yeah. And so he was putting all of his effort into this, like going, you know, and of course that's really a never ending process. I mean, we do need to put effort into meeting people's material needs who don't have it right now. But that's, you know, that's a practice, or that's a way to go where you have to keep taking care of yourself. And he just wasn't. And it led to this kind of dark night of the soul scenario. And he came out of it on the other end and kind of was liberated within his own mind, just like how we were talking about, that darkest moment, that toughest moment it breaks you free. Like it's, mm-hmm. And actually a lot of times it's losing an attachment, because that's how we suffer, right? It's like slowly losing an attachment. And so we think of it as this bad thing, or think of it as this thing that we're holding on to. And it's like, it's already gone, but we're still holding on to it anyways. And the longer we hold on to that, the longer we're going to suffer. And you can't speed up the process that much either. You can just listen to yourself, because you are only aware of what you're aware of. You can't be aware of something you're not aware of.
That's sounds so important. Just that. There's this, you're probably familiar with Ram Dass Be Here Now. It's like a very famous book with all the pictures and words inside. One of my favorite pages, I don't actually even own this book, but one of my favorite pages is of the snake shedding its skin. And the words on the page say something like, the snake sheds its skin at the rate that it sheds its skin. You can't rip it off. And in the same way, you are going to, I don't know exactly what it said, but your spiritual practice or your growth as a human being is going to evolve at the rate which it evolves. And it's your job to just be present and be loving throughout the process, because you're going to grow at the rate that you grow. And I think we have a really hard time accepting that.
Well, to me, the purpose is to grow. That's it. It doesn't, I know there are a lot of famous quotes of just it doesn't matter if you're crawling as long as you're moving forward.
But it's okay, even if part of your growth might be you go backwards or you are still for a while.
For sure.
No, that's the part that's hard for me to accept, is when I'm going backwards or when I'm still I feel like I'm not growing anymore. But that's part of it.
Yeah. Well, and that is still moving, right? You're still, because
you're still alive. You're still breathing.
You're still alive.
Moving, you're still growing.
And those, I actually, to kind of color a picture, I had in college, in high school, I got a bunch of concussions from football. And I had always just identified myself as an athlete, a nice person, a nice athlete that was pretty smart. Those three things. I was a smart athlete, but I didn't really think of myself as just a smart person. I was a nice athlete, but I wouldn't consider myself just and this is looking back, of course, I didn't think about myself in terms of identifying who I was in high school, but looking back, I was so identified with these things. And I remember when I got my third concussion, I wasn't able to play football anymore. I wasn't able to play basketball for a year. And I also was having my mom read me my textbooks. I couldn't even read my textbooks for my whole junior year without getting headaches. And it was this long process of letting go of being an athlete and not letting go of I don't consider, my mind is works a little more slowly now, which I honestly don't mind that much. It's just slowed down a little bit, and that's totally fine. I used to be able to speed read, and now I don't do that, but it helps me. It actually taught me how to study better. I feel like I was always kind of just memorizing things because I could, and not really learning how to do things. And so now I'm really good at learning how and why things are happening, rather than just what the answer is, whether it's with work or I'm still in school. But I just remember losing those things. And during college, it really became apparent, I was not even athletic anymore because I was gaining weight. And it was just I had this just moment of okay, I'm not an athlete. I'm not, and I was also surrounded by people that were smarter than me, getting super good grades in engineering classes. I'm just going to comm and doing fine, And I just remember feeling like, well, am I just a nice guy now? Is that just like how people see me, as I'm just the nice guy? And somehow like feeling ashamed of that, right? Like feeling like that's toxic masculinity, is being ashamed of being nice, ashamed of people thinking of you as a kind person. Like that's toxic masculinity, because we're kind of taught, whether subconsciously or people might teach you it specifically, like that, like good guys finish last. Like that's literally a phrase that people mention all the time. And it was so funny to go through that and then finally release it. And that when you release it, that's where you can grow into who you are now. You know, you're trying to hold on to what you're not anymore for so long. And then when you finally let it go, you don't even have to find who you are necessarily. It'll just, if you're just present with yourself and you listen to your own, what you want right now, it'll lead you in the right direction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that I want to come back to this book. There was something I was thinking of earlier when we first started speaking about it. And there's something that Krishna says in the book. And this is like tying back to like what you were saying about the guy who, the young Pueblo who was getting burned out on the humanitarian work, and just in all the work that we're doing in our lives, not getting attached to the fruits or the outcomes. And Krishna says in the book, or maybe this isn't even in the book, I think it is, but he says, everything in your life is completely meaningless, but it's very important that you do it. Like everything you do in your life, it doesn't matter, because everything ends. The activity that you do ends, the effects that it had on that person, like for that time, ends. You'll be forgotten, your body will die. But so like in the end, yes, like things are meaningless, but it's very important that you do it, because it's your duty and it's nothing else. And that's like where faith comes in, because you could read that and have a super nihilistic approach to life, and say, okay, well, if everything's meaningless, then like why would I do anything? But it's just because it's your duty, and you have to have faith that like this is what your purpose is on this earth, is to just do your duty. Or like that's more of a Western term, would be duty. If you're going to use the Eastern term, it would be dharma. Like your purpose on this earth is to do these things. And yeah, it doesn't really matter. And it's okay with it not mattering. If you actually have that approach, but are still enthusiastic about life, you're not going to be attached to the outcomes, because you're like, it doesn't matter. Like what does it matter to me? As long as I'm, doing my purpose here, then I die anyway. And like, let me live for right now, and let me be with myself through every step of this journey, because I don't want to miss any more of it. And that's like something, again, when I had that feeling last week, I was like, damn, dude, I don't want to miss any more of it. I was like, I've hit rock bottom. I'm sure I can hit even deeper parts in the future, like knock on wood, but like, I'm okay with that. Like, because even like rock bottoms that I'd hit in the past, like this one just like I just felt like very like empty. And I still have that feeling of this kind of like hollowness, which is just like kind of interesting. It's like it's almost freeing, but also a little bit uncomfortable, because it's like literally I just feel kind of like empty, but it's not necessarily bad. I'm just like, damn, there's so much space here, because I think just being that low, I just had to like clear so much out. And now I'm just kind of chilling. I'm like, okay, like I have this story of me, and I have these things that I'm doing, but it's like, it feels like a little bit like I have a little bit of space between like me and this person who's doing these things. And that doesn't mean that I don't feel connected. Like I feel very connected, but it just like, it feels like I have, just like more space. And who knows, next week I could be back to, being like angry and sad and whatever else. But I think that these moments are important to, like remember that it can be like this, but there's no attachment that it's going to be like this all the time. And I think that's another big pitfall, is believing that you're doing well or you're doing the right thing if you feel good, like if you feel clear and you feel connected and blah, 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 blah. And I think part of like that attachment principle is like, I can feel the shittiest I've ever felt in my entire life, and I need to like have peace with that. And I think that's where your true power is being, and this is like actually like a biblical reference. There's this prophet or this apostle Paul, who keeps getting like captured and taken prisoner and tortured and all these things. And he's like very much at peace about it. And he says like, I've learned the secret to being content in like every given situation. Like he could be having an amazing experience or literally being someone's prisoner and being tortured, but he had faith. He knew that he was doing his duty, so he had peace there. And I think that that's just such a powerful lesson, that even all of these goals that may have been instilled in you by society or by your own pressures that you have on yourself, your own dreams, like you have to be willing to let those all go. And I'm a firm believer that dreams do come true and you have these dreams for a reason, but you have to be like completely okay with either living like a horrible life, like a painful life, or having your dreams like change or your future not align with what you envisioned. And that's okay, as long as you feel like you're strong in your purpose and you're passionate about your purpose and you're not really doing it for you anyway. You're doing it because you're a part of life, and what a mysterious thing that we're in, and you can have peace throughout anything. And like those are the strongest people who, I don't know, like those are the people I admire most in life, are people who've been through some really, really grueling experiences and they come out on the other side or move through them with grace and with peace. And there's no like sense of revenge or spite or bitterness towards this experience that life handed them. They're okay. And that's the utmost strength. That's what I strive for, because life is never going to get easier. Never.
No, I love that.
Stronger.
I love that so much. I feel like it's just highlighting how important it is to, like you were saying, like not being attached to how it is right now. Like I'm coming up with an example of a situation that I went through where somebody was like, and I was actually with my friend as well, and I kind of try not to, like, I accept compliments, or I accept praise, but I try not to be attached to it, like, because, like that can be temporary. And basically the situation ended up happening where my friend and I were being praised a lot. And then we got kind of, whatever the opposite of praising is, and kind of talked down to a little bit. And it felt bad for me in the moment, but it didn't like affect me that deeply and like going forward, kind of, it wasn't one of those karma situations where like I feel like I'm being weirdly affected by this more than I kind of would normally be, like something's being triggered, that wasn't happening for me. And my friend, it kind of was like, it was really hurting him, and I think and he actually was the one that finally ended up, we always talk about the ego and stuff, and he ended up telling me he had become attached to this idea of being praised. And so when it went the other way, it was like it was losing this idea of or losing this attachment to praise, or of being praised, or having that person see you in that way. And then when it went back to being proud again, he was like, oh yeah, it just rolled off of me.
Yeah, dude, that needs to be the way. Yeah. Not taking things personally. Like, what's that book, The 4 Agreements? So simple, but so powerful. You hear it and you're like, oh yeah, that's a good thing. But if you were to truly live that way, your life would be so harmonious. I can't remember. It's like, be impeccable with your word. So like, don't try to make things sound like, you know, don't exaggerate, don't lie, don't speak ill of other people, don't gossip, like all of these things that just literally add to the clouding of your own person and other people.
Being
And
impeccable with yourself as well is a big part of that.
yeah,
Being
like your
impeccable with
self-honesty.
yourself. When you tell yourself something, like you're saying with your determination, you know, when you tell yourself something, when you really want that, you gotta stay with it. Yeah, being
and like even the
impeccable.
way you speak to yourself, like it can expand into so many, because like communication is one of like the very core like aspects of life. Like information, like how do we give and receive information, like that's everything. So like being impeccable with your word, that's huge. The other one is like try your best. Like
Yes.
damn, so simple, but like if everyone were to just like try their best at everything, we'd be in some kind of utopia right now.
And I love the thing that it hit me because when I first read like try your best, of course, like from growing up in this society, my head immediately goes to like trying your hardest all the time, you know, but that's not really what your best is necessarily. It might be at certain points, but I just loved how one of the things that he wrote was
What is
never
his name, the author?
Don Miguel Ruiz, I
Yeah,
want to say.
that's correct. Yeah.
And he said, never do less than your best, because when you do less than your best, basically you're going to end up thinking about it and regretting it later because you didn't put in your best. You weren't your best. You weren't doing the best that you could do. But also, and as importantly, maybe more importantly for a lot of people in my life and myself, is never trying to do more than your best either. Because you can't do more. You can't do better than your best. And that's perfectionism. And there's no such thing as being better than your best. So
but you can try. It's like a mindset thing. Like you can try to do better than your best. And that's when the perfectionism gets all squirrely. Because like, oh, sorry. I was just going to say, just like to relate it back to something simple, which is just like me going on a run yesterday. Like I could have not gone on that run and that's fine. But then later in the day, I'd be like, damn, like I just would have felt like better if I would have gone on that run, you know? And it would have, you know, clouded up my headspace a little bit. But if I were to like run a lot more miles than I set out to, like think that I need to do more, like what I did wasn't my best, then I also get into a bad headspace. Because either way, like I'm getting kind of like flooded with these thoughts about like what I did. And there's just that takes up so much time and so much energy. Just like do what you do and it was good, and then you focus on the next thing. And yeah, I don't know.
No, for sure. I think I think you and I both have like things that we try to mentally understand so we can remind ourselves of deeper things that aren't necessary. It's like reminding yourself mentally so you can try to embody what you know is great from a previous experience. But like I always tell myself with that lesson of not trying to do more than your best, is whenever I'm going into, whether it's a yoga class or whether it's a day at work that I know is going to be really intense and I have to be on my A game, you know, just knowing that my best is being completely present with what I'm doing.
Yes. Because trying to do, sorry.
Well, I was going to say, and like me doing my best, if it doesn't end up happening or it doesn't end up resulting in what I wanted it to result in, I did my best. And if it didn't result in what I thought might happen if I did do my best or what I was striving for, then that wasn't meant to happen anyways, because I did my best. If I was trying to do more than my best, I would actually be worse than my best.
Yeah, because then the thoughts pollute it. Yeah. No, I think that is super potent. So there's always do your best, be impeccable with your word. Don't take things personally. I feel like that's what they're all actually really tough, but I feel like especially as a Western culture, that's the one that we struggle with so much because we react so intensely to things. But it's also like you can't even really blame people for how they react so intensely because like that's their world, that's their reality, that's how they see things. And I know that's a big thing for me is I judge how people react to certain things and I judge myself for how I react to certain things. And I just have to remind myself with, you know, that compassion that you spoke of earlier, like I'm just not there yet, or they're just not there yet. And that's okay. Like they're going to grow at the rate at which they grow. I'm going to grow at the rate that I will grow at. And where I am right now, I can note, damn, I wish I didn't react like that. But sometimes it's just a thought that I wish I didn't react that way, but you don't always have, your thoughts can't really control how you act all the time. But it's a nice goal to have. But that's definitely one of the biggest things for me is watching my reactions and watching other people's reactions and just be like, damn, dude, like that's from such a place of ego. Like people are just like so quick to be like, oh, how dare you, you know, and it doesn't always come out as explicitly as that, but it's like people just get so offended at everything. So offended.
It's so human of us to like think that everything everyone else does says something about us.
Right? It's like sometimes we even just view someone else's behavior that has absolutely nothing to do with us. And we just like get offended that we witnessed it, you know? Like, I feel like that is like judgment at its most ridiculous. I do this all the time. Like sometimes, like, I don't know, for instance, I'm at the grocery store and I see someone, I don't even have a good example of this, but maybe I like see someone, I don't know, like speak to someone a certain way and it had nothing to do with me. But then I noticed myself for like the next 15 minutes, just like somehow like offended that I had to witness that person, like maybe like speak unkindly to someone else or just like be obnoxious or like, I don't know, like put the ice cream in with the like refrigerated stuff. I'm just like, I'm like, why am I so offended at this? Like, you got to note it and move on. Like something that my mom always said to me when I was little, because I would really bully my siblings. Like it was pretty bad. I would like beat them up. But we can laugh about it now. But like once in a while, my siblings are just like, you would like beat us.
They still bring it up.
Yeah. They're like, you made us your slaves. Like, I remember there was this like what, but I think that they kind of liked it. There was I just remember this one day where like they were like my slaves, so whatever I said they had to do. It's so funny how little kids act.
You know what, going back a second to what you were just talking about, but you know what is one of the biggest spiritual practices for me, and I've learned a lot about it just because there's so many triggers that come up, is when you're in traffic or in a car. Like it's like these metal boxes magnify ego by like 100 times.
Yeah, it's like some kind of like radiation or like some kind of like chemical like synergistic thing happening. Human plus metal box equals huge reaction.
It equals a lot of judgment and a lot of story creating. I can feel myself creating a story about someone in a car that just cut me off. I haven't even seen this person yet. I'm like, I gotta race up to like see who this person is.
Right. Or sometimes like if I just make eye contact with someone at a stoplight and I just like decide to imagine their entire life story, like sometimes like in a negative way. It's like, damn, I don't like how the side of your face looks. Let me create a whole story about you. See, this is the other thing. Like when we talk about all these ideals and everything, yeah, it's great because what we want to do as humans is we want to suffer less. That's why we're doing all this. And we can't take on this like holier than thou attitude, because at the end of the day, like, why are we trying to grow spiritually? Why are we trying to become these selfless people? Because it feels better, because we don't want to suffer. Like, why do we want to live a life of devotion and a life of service and a life of love? Because it feels better. And like, I think that that's why we were created with this aversion to pain and this like addiction to pleasure, is because, yeah, like we can see it in, I don't know, maybe like more lower ways, like, you know, sex and drugs and money and whatever. But that still stays with you as you're like getting quote unquote, like more, you're just growing, evolving better as a human. Like that's why we're doing the work, is to feel better. And we have good intentions. Yes. Like we want to serve other people. We want to live a more harmonious life. Like we want the world to be a better place in like the little ways that we can have a little bit of an effect. But it's because of that. And so along the way, as you're on the journey, as you're shedding your skin at the rate that you shed your skin, like it's a beautiful thing for us to, you know, have big fuck ups in life and to have these experiences of anger and like getting lost in emotions, like getting lost in the sadness and getting lost in the anger and the jealousy, and having like dramatic things happen in your life, messing up in your relationships, screwing up in your own, like, I don't know, like things that you're working on, because it's human. And like, that's a really beautiful thing. And I often, when I'm feeling, like when I kind of catch myself just so attached to something, I'm like, okay, damn, like I wish I wasn't like so involved in this right now. But I like have been taking on the perspective, wow, like this is so human. Like this is so beautiful. If everyone walked around as these like angels all the time, life would be pretty boring, you know? And so I like just think of like these great like plays and movies that we have. Like the reason that we love them is because it's so raw. It's so like, it's the tragedy that makes life so beautiful. It's the loss and the gain and the pain and the pleasure and all of that contrast. It's the feelings of being super awake and connected contrasted with those feelings of dark depression and isolation. Like that's what makes the human experience so incredible. And if you can move through life with more of a sense of awe, even if you're not feeling that all the way, but if you can connect to that. So even when you're feeling not good, even when you're in a painful chapter of your life, you can kind of remember, even though you're not necessarily experiencing it, you can remember, oh, like this is part of it. Like this is something that I'm going to look back on with awe, or that I have the option to look at with awe, even if right now I'm like, fuck this sucks, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know. I think that's so incredible. And so like, we need to embrace those parts of us that are still really attached, because I think that part of my experience the other week with just being like, damn, like I'm in this thing, like I'm in with this one and there's no rush. Like, I don't want to miss a second, is because I don't want to get to this point where I'm just like this like holy person, like floating around. Like, no, like that's not it. Like I'm okay with dying with a lot of problems. I'm okay if I don't resolve all my problems in my life. I'm okay with being messy. I'm okay with not being perfect, because it's real. And that's what we really want, is real. And I can still be messy and have a lot of problems, and I can still be doing my duty. And I'm always going to be trying to grow. But the point is not to get to ultimate growth. The point is to live a human life. Like that's the purpose of life. Just be here, just experience it. We have no idea what this is. So just like be here for it. We can have all these ideals of like, oh, it would be better to not react in traffic, but it's so human to react in traffic. And like, it's crazy. And so like once in a while, if you're able to like take a step back and watch some of the drama in your own life, or watch some of the drama that someone else might be having, you're just like, rad. Like that's crazy. That's awesome.
And it's all about that space, right? It's the space in the body. You create space in the body. In our yoga classes, I've really been focusing on just feeling, using your inhales to feel constrictions in the body, to feel where the breath is constricted, and consciously breathing into those constrictions, putting a little attention there, like expanding those spaces a bit, and then softening those spaces and feeling that space created over time. You can feel that space in your mind. And it's like, I always talk about, it's when you have that little bit of space, or when you don't have that space, it's like your thoughts are this river, right? And this river can be calm. This river might be turbulent. This river might be whatever. And if you're in the water, if you're in the water, if you're submerged, like you are subject to the tides. You're subject to the state of the water. If the water is frantic, you will be frantic. If the water is calm, you might be calm. But we can create a little bit of space to just sit on the bank of the river and allow the water to go by the way that it goes by. And actually, from this viewpoint, you can connect more fully to the water, because you can kind of see it from this bird's eye view rather than being so caught up in it. And for me, it's allowing, and of course, when the water's calm, it's a little easier to climb out, right? It's hard to climb out of the water when it's turbulent.
But that's when you want to get out the most.
Totally.
Tricky. Yeah, definitely. But the thing is, like, even when you're in the water and it's rough and you don't want to be fully identified with it, it's, if we are labeling rough water as painful experiences and calm water as pleasurable experiences. Even when you're in the turbulent waters and you feel so identified with it, you're not sitting on the bank. But if you have, when the waters are calm, experience and look into, like, through, like, introspection and all of these things, like gaining more space, be like, oh, there's a bank. If you're able to, like, use those times of calm in your life to just, like, look around and be like, oh, there's a bank. And then you go and you sit on your bank, like, cool, like, I can watch this go by. And then next thing you know, you're like, oh shit, I'm in the water again. How'd I get here? And it's crazy. And you're like, and you get super identified with it. And you're like, oh wait, there's a bank. You're like, I can't get there right now, but I know that it's okay, because I'll be able to get there again. And I know that this isn't all there is. I know that there's something else.
It allows you to remember that it's temporary, right? Yeah. It's ephemeral. I love that word. Oh, and what's the fourth one? Right action or something like that? In the four.
I don't actually know. I can.
It's the one that is discussing taking action. I'll give a little preface before you come up with the phrase, but I know that he loves this one so much because the first three are.
Don't make assumptions.
Oh, don't make assumptions. Okay, never mind.
What were you gonna say?
Well, no, I think I was actually thinking of be impeccable with your word, because he actually said, like, the other three, if you're not impeccable with your word, the other three are kind of meaningless, because they're just like, you won't have that commitment, right? You won't have the full commitment to actually realize those truths. So being impeccable with your word for him, for Don Miguel Ruiz, was like the most important, to be able to put it into action and to be able to create that system that you want to live in, because the system that you create for your own life is the system. Those actually, in the Bhagavad Gita, in the preface, they talk about how I've always thought of my highest self being one that's completely unlensed, right? One that does not see the world through lenses. And all of a sudden my mind's kind of changing about this, because the book was talking about how we want to lose the attachments to selfish things. But for selfless things, we actually can perceive the world through compassion and through accountability and all of these, like, to be able to see the world through those lenses. It was kind of blowing my mind, because I had always felt like I want to unlens. But there are some lenses that are foundational, like I was talking about, like compassion, like to see the world through a compassionate lens. That makes it so much easier. Like for me, like we're talking about when we fuck up, right? what happens if you have a bad relationship with failure or with messing up? Then sometimes it can set you back. If you have a better relationship with it, it can help you step up. You can learn from it. Those are the times that you can learn the most, really. And how do you have a good relationship? It's having, I think it starts with compassion for yourself. I think it's compassion as in, I am human and I am not perfect. And maybe even I did my best. And then accountability, like to actually take full responsibility for your life. Like that is a scary thing. It's a scary thing because there's nobody, once you realize the power of your potential, there's no one else to blame but yourself. Like when you realize your potential, you can start taking accountability if you want to face that. But if you don't take accountability, you're not stepping into your own power, because you're saying, well, this didn't work because of something else. And then you're not going to learn what you needed to learn about yourself in that process.
Absolutely. I think that is one of the most important lessons ever, is being able to take ownership for your own life, which seems like a simple thing that I feel like that can get misconstrued sometimes, but all that really means is, you were born into a certain circumstance, and that could be easier in some dimensions and more difficult in other dimensions, but it's a gamble. You're here, you can't really change it, but you got to own it. Whatever cards you were dealt, you got to be like, okay, these are my cards, and I can change some things. Maybe it's easier for this other person. Maybe they got dealt a better hand, but that doesn't change anything for me. And me saying, oh, my power is outside myself because this person got dealt a better hand, that takes all the power out of you. So when you're constantly when you constantly have a victim mentality where you're saying like, oh, well, I'm not happy and I'm not doing well in life and I can't do this and I can't do this, it's weakness. You're not able to take ownership and be like, okay, this is what I've got and I'm going to be stronger and I'm going to expand that power that's within me. That's not because like I am a part of life and I can make my own decisions and I can overcome all of the hardships and the things that don't seem fair. And I can use those as fuel and I can use those as a way to, propel me forward. I feel like pain and suffering is the most powerful teacher, because without it, if you're living an easy life, then there's not much motivation to change. And so I don't know, like, at least for me, even though I definitely get bummed out about things that are difficult in my lives, and not to say that I have the most difficult life, I'm just speaking like in my own personal, like, subjectivity. Like, I like to have the view that like, damn, these difficult things that I was dealt or that I go through, like this is where my strength comes from. And the easy things that I was dealt or that I experienced, I'm just like nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love that. And it's coming back a little bit with young Pueblo about that liberation. It's he moved from liberating material needs, people that needed material, in that way, from a material needs stance, to liberating his own mind, to liberating himself from his own prison, which I believe takes a lot of accountability. Because if you're constantly putting your happiness into external factors, that's creating a prison, for your, it's controlling, you're not taking accountability for your life.
That's what I say. Like, this is like something that I've used. If you're bummed out and you're imprisoned because you're saying this thing is not fair and this circumstance is not fair and blah, 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 then they win. Like, that person who wronged you, that experience that like weakened you, if your response to that is like, okay, well, now I can't because of this, then they win. And I like to think of it that way. Like, if you're gonna have like these kind of opposing forces, which is this kind of visual that we often take in life, is like this against this, you're you're just like, nah, dude, like that thing that hurt you, like you can just flip it a big bird and be like, no, I win, because I'm not going to let this bother me. And I'm going to use that to make me focus in and zone even more on my purpose. And, you know, you don't want to be like acting from like a revenge standpoint or like a fuck you standpoint, but you can definitely use that initially to like at least get the momentum going. That's why anger is such a powerful thing. It gets the momentum going. It's a tricky one. You don't want to stay there, but it's super powerful to get things moving.
Well, I think there's this one phrase, I think it might be from the Queen's Gambit actually, but he says that anger is a potent spice. A little bit will wake you up, too much can whatever, you know, make you lose
give you indigestion.
Give you indigestion, right?
Something that I was also kind of thinking about when you were talking about young Pueblo and his humanitarian work is it was reminding me of when maybe it was in the Gita when he was saying everything in your life is meaningless, but it's very important that you do it. Is I feel like a lot of people with that approach when it comes to humanitarian work is the reason a lot of people burn out is because it gets so overwhelming. You're like, there's no end. People need so much help. There's no end. Mm-hmm. And I was on this, I was in Mexico this past weekend, and I was with a group, and we were building a house for a family there through this organization called Homes of Hope. And there's so much poverty all over the world, but like even just in the village we were, we're like, damn, like every single one of these people could really use a house. Mm-hmm. And so you look out, and the guy who started the organization, like this was his viewpoint on it. You look out to like all this need and poverty, and you're just like, this is so overwhelming. Like we can never build houses for them all. We can never feed them all. We can never give them the resources that they need. But that shouldn't deter you from being like, like, fuck it then. Like we should just do nothing. Cause like, it's going to matter for that family. And then you build another house, and then it matters for that family. So your work is not worthless. If you're working at a standpoint of like, okay, I need to fix this and fix this and fix this, then it's not for the people anymore. It's not actually service. It's like, oh, I have this deep responsibility to be the hero and be the savior and like fix all these people. But that's not what service is, and that's not what love is. And I think that that's why a lot of people burn out, is because it gets so overwhelming and they take it on so personally. Like, I'm not doing enough, because you can never do enough. Mm-hmm. And you can even translate that, like, even if you're not living a lifestyle like that, like you can translate that to your own life. And like, yeah, you're never going to be able to do enough, because you can't do it all. Like growth never stops. There's always going to be new things that you want to learn. There's always going to be new experiences you want to have. There's always going to be problems that you can identify that you need to fix. That never stops. That's the human condition. But that doesn't mean that you don't try, because that one decision mattered and that next action mattered. And that's why like living in the moment is just so important. Like it's not for the result of the action. Like you do it because it matters right now. Like that house mattered for that family, and your decision to, not act from, I don't know, like a lower state of consciousness in a certain situation, just choosing like pure, like, okay, no, I do my duty now. That mattered then. That matters for you, and that matters for your path, like right then. And yeah, I don't know, that's just been like hitting me kind of hard.
And I think I'm like, there's so many people that volunteer, I think, to make themselves feel better too. Mm-hmm. I think that's coming, I mean, if you're trying to make yourself feel better, it's coming from, a place of ego.
Yeah, but that's okay.
And that's okay. I mean, if you're still creating good, it is okay for sure. I think it depends on the situation, but yeah, I was thinking about how, you were saying nothing will be enough, is what you're saying. Like no thing will be enough, but like you can be enough just by being yourself.
Yeah, just by you're here, you're doing it, that's enough. Nothing you do will ever be enough. And that's like in the Bhagavad Gita, they're like, action is so important, but you're not your actions. You're not even the person who's doing the actions. You're not even the mind who is seemingly controlling the actions. Like, you're none of that.
It's not what you do, it's how you do what you do.
How you do one thing is how you do everything.
Yes.
It's that focus, that clarity, that spaciousness, just that peace, that it's okay and it's accepting. And it's definitely my goal to live more out of that space of just having space.
That's honestly why I love living where I live right now so much, is like I literally have physical space around and it is so quieting. It's so quieting. Like Eckhart Tolle, one of our favorite guys, he said the best thing money can't buy you happiness, but it can buy you space, and that's pretty good.
I love that.
It's like just having a little space or being able to find space. You don't need to live out in the country. That's just been something that I've been enjoying, but just finding space in your days, just finding space in your day, even if it's a hectic day, just 10 seconds to breathe, right? Just coming into your space, coming into your inner space, you don't have to be introspective all the time. I think I am introspective a lot. Like almost everything I go through, I think about like how I'm reacting to it. And that's just kind of how I am. I don't think you have to do that at all. Like I have plenty of friends that the experience itself is what is, experiencing something is enough. They don't have to analyze their experience. Like for me, if I go to a concert, like I want to talk about the concert afterwards, or even like say how much I love the concert right now, while it's going. But then like my friends around me, I have one friend who just is so just about the experience. Like he doesn't, and for me, part of the experience is communicating about it. But for some people, it's almost like the moment you're trying to portray what you're experiencing, you're out of that experience, if it's a concert,
it's
true. Joke or whatever it is.
And I think that something that I kind of want to embody more throughout this chapter is I want to speak less. I want to speak less to myself, like constantly analyzing everything I do. I want to speak less to other people about all the things that I'm doing, because by doing that, it's just constantly feeding into ego. And I want less labels and less judgments, like whether they're good or bad. I want to be here. And here doesn't have any description. It's just here. It's just you're alive. And as soon as you start trying to make sense of it, it loses that spaciousness. The more you try to describe it, the more constricted it gets, the more boxed in it gets, because we're trying to categorize and we're trying to figure out our experience, which is great, but not all the time. And I feel like a lot of us are constantly trying to figure stuff out, and that just takes away from just being here, being human, breathing. And like you said, like those opportunities that we have, even when life is hectic, whatever your experience is, you always have a couple minutes or a couple seconds in the day. Like everyone always has that. You can even be in the middle of doing an activity and you can still drop into that spacious stillness by just breathing and just remembering, damn, there's a lot of stuff moving around me. Life is constantly moving. It doesn't stop, but like I'm still here in the center. And yeah.
And everything is just fine right now.
It's just fine. Sometimes it's not fine. It is fine if you can have the perspective that everything is fine and be living out of that space, which makes life so much easier. But I know for me, not there all the time.
It's fine if you allow yourself to just be as you are.
Yeah.
And not hold, not so often I feel like especially younger, I think we learn this is just invalidating your own feelings. Like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling that in this scenario, and I think that invalidation comes from just think about when a kid is upset at a restaurant and the parents no, stop crying, to me, or they'll try to say oh no, it's okay, everything's okay, and in a sense everything is okay. It's okay to feel how you're feeling, but it's not you can't force yourself to be no, I'm going to be happy right now. I'm going to feel a different emotion than what I'm feeling. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. And that's something else that I've held it as an ideal, but I don't always experience it. Even those little times in the day where I have a headache or I'm feeling an emotion that I don't really want to be feeling right now. Just really just meeting yourself there and not trying to constantly try to almost get away from yourself in those experiences. Just be okay, I'm just going to feel bad right now. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to, obviously sometimes there's things you can do to fix that. So it's not about being stupid and giving up. It's just the things that are out of our control sometimes, just it's okay. Mm-hmm. And I know that sounds so simple, but to be able to truly experience just peace about when things feel bad, just let it happen. Mm-hmm. It's okay. It's temporary. Mm-hmm. And learn from it. If you're constantly resisting pain, there's no space for you to potentially learn something there. And in that same vein, with me just wanting to not miss a second of this life, if I'm constantly resisting all the times that I feel bad or life isn't going the way I want, I lose those moments in my life because I'm so busy resenting the fact that it's quote unquote wrong. And then I lose it. I lose this precious life that we have a seemingly finite time in this human body on this earth. And it's like you have a book and you're just I'm just going to skip this paragraph. I'm just going to skip this paragraph. You don't get the full story. You don't get the full experience. I want to be there for every word of my book. I feel like we should end it here. It's been an hour and a half, and I think that an hour and a half is a good time. I just want to know if you have any closing thoughts to wrap it up.
I can't tell you how excited I think about how excited I am about what you and I want to keep doing, and who knows what it's going to even evolve into, beyond just becoming more connected with this podcast. I just love having these conversations because it's we've talked about this forever, and just being able to catch up with you in this way and to be able to share it with people is just a dream, really. And I'm excited to see where it goes, and all we need to do is keep doing it, and we'll see.
Yeah. I can commit to once a month.
I think I can commit to once a month as well. And today's the 1st of May.
Let's be impeccable with our word here.
Impeccable with our word, yes.
Once a month we can do that.
I know that this internet works pretty well now. I haven't had any legs, so that's great.
Yeah, very good. No, I am really excited, and I feel no rush with it. I feel no pressure. I just want this to evolve organically, and I want us to feel, just good about it and in flow with it. It's not something that we have to do. We get to do it, and there's no rush. And so I'm just really excited to take this journey with you. I'm really, really happy that you want to support this podcast and these conversations. And by the way, people listening, Tommy's gonna help me with editing and back end stuff, because that is a big part of why I haven't been recording podcasts, because I just I hate all the technical stuff. I can do it, but I much prefer the big picture to some other of, those really important things, but the details, Thank you. I'm so excited. I'm really excited to see how this may evolve, whether that be something like spectacular maybe, but mostly I just want to put this out there for like the couple people who do listen, because people do listen to this podcast, even though, you know, we don't have like hundreds of thousands of millions of views. Like people do listen to this, and like I'll have people reach out to me that they're just like, this was powerful for me. And I feel lucky that I'm not taking it as like, oh, I did something good. Like I genuinely don't feel that. I'm just like, we're having a conversation that we would have anyway, and someone else gets to join in on that conversation. And that's so cool. And also in these long form discussions, like you can just get so much deeper, and like things are so like sound bite and just like quick here and there information. And that's why I love podcasts, is because you get to go deeper and like things aren't rushed and you're just taking your time. And I'm really excited for us to just take our time with this and speak more and continue to follow each other's journeys.
I love sharing this space with you so much. It's the best.
It feels right. Right.
It feels like this is our duty.
This is our duty. This is one element, one slice of the pie in our duty pie. Well, I'm gonna go move all the rest of the stuff out of my house. I really am not wanting to do this, but I am going to do it.
You're gonna do
and it. I'm gonna do it. All right, let me close this out here. Everyone who has listened up until this point, thank you so much for hanging out with us. As always, if anyone has any feedback for the show, any topics that you would like us to cover, anything, please let us know. If you want to be on the podcast, hit me up. I probably would love to have a conversation with you. And I want to hear lots of different people's perspectives. That's what this show is about, is just getting it all in here, just hearing it all. Because the more angles that you hear, the more of a fuller picture you're going to have. And you can follow This Human Thing for updates at This Human Thing on Facebook and Instagram. If you want to support the show, we have a Patreon. I think it is /theshala. Tommy is my loyal Patreon subscriber.
I support the podcast in more than one way.
He supports the podcast. And you can also support the podcast by leaving a review on iTunes. And you can watch the show on YouTube for the video. And then audio is on iTunes, Spotify, some other places like Google and Amazon. And I think that about wraps us up. So hit up Tommy, hit up me. We're gonna put these out once a month, me and him. We can come up with some funky name for like this segment that we have every month, and hopefully in the interims, I'll have some more people on the show or do some more like meditations or things like that. So you want to say goodbye, Tommy?
Goodbye to everybody. Thank you for listening to This Human Thing. And much love to you, Kat, and good luck with your move.
Thank you. All right, guys, whatever you're doing out there, keep doing your thing. Peace in, peace out.